Jacqueline, hey, congratulations for your film, My Animal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Hey, not a problem. I actually checked it out back at Sundance. So this is one of the more
Oh, cool.
interesting films at that festival. So definitely
Oh,
cherish this
that's
chat
awesome.
with you. So
Yeah, I know. That's awesome. You're like OG in terms of who saw the movie first. So that's really cool.
so let's ask that question first. Is what initially drew you to this project to make it your feature film debut?
Well, I mean, so it's so interesting the way that things kind of come together. You never know how your trajectory is going to happen based on all the factors that come together. I didn't actually anticipate that My Animal would be my first feature. I thought it was going to be like my third or fourth movie. And it came to me during this really interesting time right before the pandemic. And I remember thinking, oh, this is like I really the script was sent to me by my producer, and I was working on a bunch of different projects and screenplays, and I really connected with it. And I met up with the screenwriter Jay, and we talked through the characters and the world, and started working on the screenplay together. But it's so funny. It ended up moving to the forefront because of the pandemic, because it was actually the easiest movie to be able to make. So as I love the film and I love the project, but I never anticipated that being the first one, which is like the really funny thing about it. But yeah, I mean, I'm really excited that it was my first film, that ended up, coming to the forefront, but it wasn't originally structured that way. It was just a film that was like, okay, this is one that we can get done in the context of the entire world shutting down.
I found this film pretty interesting was because it could fit in like so many different genres, but how did you want to approach it? Did you want to approach it like a like sort of like a horror movie or a coming of age story? I mean, how did you want to approach it?
Um, I mean, I think that at its core, and the thing that I really loved about the screenplay was that I'm really interested in outsider characters, and I really wanted to build it around this sort of horror of the outsider idea. But I knew, like, in the script, I was like, this is straddling all these different genres, and I thought that was really compelling about it. I mean, I'm a huge genre fan, but I also love that there were like elements of like drama, and that there was like a way of playing the script where we're playing off the metaphors, as well as like her actually being a werewolf. There's also a metaphorical level to it, which I really loved. So I think, like, as a director, what was really compelling to me was the idea that I could kind of play between genres. So you've got the horror genre angle, you've got the drama, you've got the like love story romance element of it, and the coming of age. So it was a funny thing to pitch initially, because it was like, well, it's all these different things, and you have to find a way to like thread the needle in a way that will be compelling for audiences and work as a story.
So tell us about the casting process to find the right actresses to to play these characters with both Bobbi and Amandla. How did you settle with them and get them to comply with that chemistry that shows on screen?
Yeah, I mean, it was very funny. There's a lot of like really interesting things that kind of happen through the course of the casting process. And I'll start it off with like an interesting story. So, um, early on in the process, before we started casting, it was like the towards the end of 2019, and I was doing some research and going to the Wolf Conservation Center in upstate New York. And I went there, and I ended up symbolically adopting a wolf. And I chose this wolf named Diane. And I chose the wolf Diane because Diane is the goddess of the hunt and of wild animals and of tomboys and the moon. And I was like, perfect, this is the wolf. So I adopt this wolf, and then I start going into the casting process. I mean, I had already kind of been putting ideas together, but it was 2020, the pandemic had just hit, and this was when we were about to go out to actors. But I do a lot of research on my actors. I get really like into trying to find people that I feel like are going to just really connect with a role on a personal level. So I knew that I wanted to start out with Heather's role first. And so I was aware of Bobbi Menuez's work just from being in the New York indie scene, and really thought that this was like an opportunity for Bobbi to really sink into a role and really take center stage. And so I was like, okay, Bobbi's my first pick. I go out to Bobbi. Bobbi loves the script and is like, oh, I've been like looking for projects like these. I don't get these types of stories. This is so exciting for me, 100%. And around the same time that we had our first Zoom, I got this notification from the Wolf Center that was like, oh, your adopted wolf, it's their birthday today. And the wolf's birthday was the exact birthday of Bobbi. And I was like, that is weird. Like, I could have never have known that. Like, I had no idea, you know? So I was like, okay, that's a sign that this is supposed to happen this way. And so on that first Zoom call with Bobbi, of course, the conversation came up of who do you want to cast for the role of Jonny? And I said Amandla Stenberg, and that was my top pick as well. And then Bobbi's eyes just lit up, and they were like, well, we're friends. And so they knew each other already from the New York and LA queer scenes. And actually the first time they met, they admitted that they had crushes on each other. So I was like, wow, how perfect that would just happen like that. Like, and I had no idea of it. So that really helped me a lot as a director, because there was already that just inherent trust between the two of them, because they were friends and they had that chemistry, because they were, already had that little flirtation early on when they first met. So I really, that was really exciting for me. And they were just really excited to work together on a project and have that opportunity.
You had me that the fact that you approached a real wolf in the process of this production. I mean,
I know, I got the wolf's blessing.
but was a real wolf what was also used in the film too, or is that?
Yeah. We shot with an amazing wolf wrangler named Andrew Simpson. He has a property outside of in Alberta, Canada, and he services like most of the wolf requests in the film industry. But the reason I really wanted to work with him is because he so clearly loved his animals and respected his animals, and wasn't just like, there's some like animal wranglers that are just like kind of rent an animal kind of situations. And I really wanted to stay away from that. I wanted somebody who was deeply invested in the work that they did. And Andrew was absolutely incredible. So we went up to his property. I mean, and that's where Game of Thrones goes to shoot with wolves and like all sorts of huge productions. And so we went up to his property and had a shoot with the wolves there. That was complicated by the fact that we also got hit by an insane blizzard the one night that we had to shoot. So we're in this like forest environment, and it's all good. Everything's it's completely nice out. It's like sunny. It's kind of a nice temperature. And then suddenly just this blizzard just came through and just like blanketed us in snow. And we're trying to like just keep shooting. And we're like, okay, hopefully this is okay. Are the wolves freaking out? Like, are we going to get through this? Our equipment is covered in snow. And we were a pretty small skeleton shoot because it was outside of principal photography. So that was a pretty intense like start to the production with our splinter unit shoots. But we shot on the full wolf moon, which is it's the name of the full moon that happens in January. So so it was a pretty wild way to start off.
It sounds like you have a lot of different challenges. I mean, one of the things that I found very unique is how you filmed the lovemaking scenes in this film. Was that challenging for you? Because I always hear stories as like first time directors, those are like one of the most difficult things to actually film, is to prepare for.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is that part of the production actually went really smoothly. And I think it was actually kind of early on in the production, which was a decision that we had to make based on some scheduling that we really had to adhere to, being like a very small movie. But I think that what I really loved the most about that moment was because it was a closed set, it was total focus and concentration. Because I think sometimes when you're, not on closed sets, there's so many people around, there's so much energy, there's so much happening, and you have to really be able to keep your focus in that kind of environment. So when we were able to be, we kind of created this like blacked out space in a property that we were renting. It wasn't a sound stage. We created this whole little box, so it felt like this really protected space. We had this bed that was in the center of the room that was on like a dolly that would like go around in circles. Then we had a circle track that we used to dolly the camera around. And then we had a skater lens on that, which we used to then kind of get these crazy angles around them. And I loved it just from like the perspective of it was such an intimate shoot. There was so much trust between our actors because they already knew each other. And it was nice to be able to just be so focused and just play music and not have to worry about sound and just get into the emotions of the moment. So I actually thought that that was one of the like best days on set for me, was because there was no noise. It was like me and my DP and our dolly grip and the two actors, and that was it. And I loved it. I totally loved that. So that was one of my favorite days, actually.
Well, you've done a wonderful job because what I loved about this movie is how your decisions with the cinematography, with the lighting. Could you talk about the different styles of working with your DP and the utilization of the red lighting throughout a lot of scenes in the film?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I come from a camera background, so I really think a lot about that and how you're crafting an image and um how you're presenting that to audiences and the kind of emotional response you get from the way that an image is lit and the way that it's framed. And so we, like my DP, Bryn McCashin, and I, we really worked a lot towards, figuring out what is going to be the arc, like structure of the movie on a visual level, not just like, okay, we have this arc that's this screenplay and the story, and then how do the visuals track with that, and so you've got these kind of more bleak real world kind of situations for the character, but then anytime you go into these heightened states of emotional states, whether that be love or lust or anger, that's when like the characters like starts to go into these more emotional or even like experimental sort of like sequences. And I think I wanted to approach it conceptually that way, because when you're young and you're filtering through all of these intense emotional states, it colors your world. And you see the world differently when you're like in love for the first time, like everybody's just running around like maniacs, like little animals everywhere, And I wanted to capture that because I love really subjective filmmaking. I love it when you feel like you can be in the character, because I think that's a way in which you can really communicate with audiences or connect audiences to characters that they're not necessarily exposed to, or not necessarily something that they personally can connect with, but they can find that connection point and find empathy for somebody who's completely different from them by getting them invested emotionally in the characters and their emotional space. So it was really purposeful in terms of just like this sort of like sine wave that's going through the movie, like visually and with the camera work. And with the lighting, and we did a lot with like the color red, as you were mentioning specifically, and we would find like real world ways of doing it, like when the two characters are sitting in the back of the like in the car, and there's a brake light, there's just like a red brake light between them, and we wanted it to be really symbolic too of like their love story, and when the reds come in is when there are emotional moments between them. And we also did little things with Jonny's hair, like Amanda's hair. We put in more and more pink extensions as she was falling in love as a character. And then as she was like removing that or trying to distance herself emotionally, then she would like go back to just having the bleach braids. So there would be all these little things that were kind of built into the DNA of the film to reflect all the ideas back, So I love having all those kind of layers to things. Even if nobody notices them, I know that they're there, and I know that they're contributing psychologically, even if people aren't cognizant of it.
Well, it certainly affected me visually. But
Yeah.
Jacqueline, I want to address one more thing. Otherwise, horror aficionados would get upset with me.
Of course.
Tell us about the makeup on Bobbi. The transformation of Bobbi and so on. I mean, this is, as an independent movie, this must have been something that you visualized and had to live up to the challenge to put it on screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think like that's always so hard, right? Like how do you kind of like craft how a character is going to transform, and how are you going to do that with makeup, and how are you going to do that with like camera techniques or lighting techniques, or how you're going to also use you know, enhance certain things with like digital effects. So I'm always trying to find like what's the good kind of mixture between having practical and then enhancing it with digital without going too far off the deep end with that. So as much as I can do in camera, I love to do, but it was, I have to say on this one, it was pretty tough because of the fact that our film was made during a pandemic. We had a COVID shutdown, and I think I had a total of 4 different makeup artists in the course of a 4-week shoot. So it was pretty intense from that perspective, like just trying to like very rapidly and quickly get through like what we need to accomplish in some of these scenes, and also not having a lot of time on set. So it's I'm happy with how we were able to put it together, but next time I'm going to have a lot more time to dive in and make it even crazier. But I do think, but that being said, you know, you just find all the creative tricks, and you know, that you can to enhance something. Or you know, okay, we'll have the like contacts in here, and we'll do this here, and we'll do this here, to just to make it the most intriguing kind of transformation that you can, or do something a little unexpected.
Well, it is certainly one of the best movies coming out of Sundance, and now a lot of other people will definitely get to enjoy it. Jacqueline, thank you very much for carrying this conversation. I can't wait to see what you do with your sophomore feature film.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.